is like a patterned human character. Like in a movie, there's the good guy, bad guy, there's the mom, the dad. Those are archetypes. And so an archetype is a pattern of behavior that manifests after repeated interactions. So we start noticing it's kind of like, when they'd sift for gold, they'd shake it all up. And so you'd have all the heavy stuff would go one direction and all the light stuff would go another direction. And it would all kind of sort itself out at the repeated interactions between the different particles there, right? Well, archetypes are the same way. And just a general idea before we get into this, there's like the dad, right? There's a good father who's like the good king, so to speak. That's an archetype. Well, then there's the tyrant, the oppressive father who's too hard on his kids and everything like that. And well, that's the tyrant king, right? Those are archetypes. They show up. We see them. And there's always two sides to it, right? And since we're a dimorphic species, there's going to be two sides to the species. And I'll say there's two sides to that side as well. I think the best way to describe that is the Tau symbol, where it has the little swirls of the black and white. So back to the Hulk story. I believe for men, the idea is that the Hulk is the perfect archetype for a man in general. And the reason I believe that is the Hulk is this guy who's got all this uber masculine. He's competitive. He's like, ah, and he tries to attack everything, and he's having trouble controlling his anger and his temper. But at the same time, it's where all his power is at. And so I feel like for men, the goal is same goal as the Hulk. What the Hulk needs to do is figure out how to control his anger and at the same time use it for all his power. And I think that's why men, if you look at the Tau symbol, we're the side that's all black with a little bit of white in the middle. So we're the side that's complete chaos, which is the idea of, think about it, everybody in puberty, you got men, they go crazy, they beat on each other, they get hyper competitive, and you see it because young men do the stupidest things in the world. We're known for it. And so it's the idea of becoming the mature, sophisticated man is one who's dangerous and has all that capability, but who has such control over it, he's willing to use it. And I think that's where the idea of confidence especially for a man, but for anybody, is your ability to be aggressive sophisticatedly in any situation. So it's your ability either to know you're not going to be aggressed against, or somebody's not going to be aggressive against you, and you're confident, so there's no competition, or you're confident because you can own anybody who's going to say anything in that situation, or any competition, whatever it may be, either when you're trying to get at somebody out in public sexually, or if it's just in discussion and conversation, you can own that conversation aggressively, and no one's going to compete with you, either because your competence or as because of your if there's no competitors or somebody's going to back you up, so to speak. So there's confidence. But back to the Hulk. As a man, I feel like the idea is evolutionarily, since we're going to talk about evolution here, since we're talking about biology, you go out and your goal was to go face nature, the hunter, right? So the idea is you go out into nature. Nature is the unknown chaos. There's not order there. It's kind of anything can happen anywhere. Snakes could be hiding under any rock. Bears could be anywhere. Either way, you're going out into chaos. I mean, despite common belief, I don't believe you fight chaos with order. I think you turn chaos into order. And you do that by being chaotic against it. The more chaotic force dominates the lesser chaotic force, and so therefore can order it to its will, right? So what's the role of a man? Well, you're this chaotic force that goes out into the chaos and you create order out of it. It's this old archetypal story of every famous god out there: Zeus, Marduk, Osiris, all of them. That's what they did. Especially Marduk. That was his whole story, is he was a guy who went out and battled the beast of chaos and created an orderly world out of it. Doesn't get much straightforward than that. So how does that manifest itself elsewhere, right? Think about it with young men. Why are young men so attracted to things like the military? Especially go to War of the Worlds, beautiful movie. Tom Cruise, the son, every time they see the battle out there and there's between the aliens and the military, he's drawn to it. And at some point he actually leaves his dad. He says, I have to go. And I think men are drawn to what they see as the frontier of chaos, whether it's scientific discovery, whether it's going to be war, wherever there is conflict, wherever there is things to be found out, wherever there is, like I said, the frontier, wherever the chaos, so to speak, is, Men want to be there, and we want to go conquer it and then come back as heroes. And so there's the reason there's that little white bit inside you is order. So men want to create order out of things. So we're chaotic creatures with the intention of creating order out of the chaos. And so same idea, they say, the alpha male of the group, right? Well, he's the one that keeps the order out of it by knowing he's the most capable chaotic person. And back to, since this is such a fun subject for me, back to high school. If you think about high school and young kids, especially in their teenagers, most people will know that it's generally seen that women go for the bad boys, right? Well, is it really that they're going for the bad boys, or is it that they're going for the man who seems like he's most capable of chaos? Which is the idea, why do women like gangsters, right? Especially like the Al Capone types. Because the most top level gangster is always the gentleman who's most composed and also most dangerous. So what do women want? They want sophisticated, dangerous men. And what do men want to be? Sophisticatedly dangerous. And what ends up happening most of the time, especially when you're young, is you're dangerous and kind of chaotic, but you're not very sophisticated. And that's where the maturity in a man, I believe, lies, is in your role to be capable of being aggressive and dangerous and competitive, and you have a control on it. Like the Hulk. Remember when he says, "I'm always angry" at the whole the Avengers movie where they're all together. He says, "I'm always angry." He can take control of that at will, and he even has control of it while he's in that chaotic state. And that's the goal of being a mature man, is stepping into that. Now, what about a woman? Well, the opposite, right? I'm going to classify them as the other side, the other half of that, where it's the white side with a little bit of black in the middle, right? So, and before I go into that, another archetypal stories, think about it when men like to go out. The traditional home back in the day is the idea of the man goes to work and the woman stays home. And when he comes home, they always say, well, the man likes things put in order, right? So to speak. And I'm speaking stories and generalities, right? But there's some truth to these things. And the roles nowadays, especially, is we've seen that they're looser. And as I just described, it's a bit of a spectrum on where you're going to fall out on those gender roles. But I think they're generally going to fall in a direction. And now you may mix those up a bit and each take on various different aspects of those, depending on how you may, how your genetics lay out and how you fill yourself out. But you're going to play into those one way or another, and you're going to pick up different roles on that. And so the women is the other side. Well, you're perceived as this orderly thing that seeks chaos. So, and the reason not necessarily that you're seeking chaos, but you're seeking something capable of it. And so for a woman, it's that idea of women want security. We hear that all the time, right? And then the men pathology will say, oh, they only want a rich guy, right? Well, security, look for it. It shows up all the time. And we know this, people who are generally famous, people who have a lot of dominance in the hierarchy, so to speak, they get a lot of women that throw themselves at them. Not every woman, but statistics show that's where it goes. Well, why? Why would that even be a pattern that would show up? Well, women are going to seek chaos, and they want to dominate. They want to create order out of it. So if men's archetypal story is that of the Hulk, well, the woman's Beauty and the Beast. It's the idea of the sophisticated woman who's trying to sophisticate the monster. And let's go back to kids being young, right? So you got the chaotic bad boy. And what does the girl say she's going to do? I'm going to go, he won't be like that with me. And well, most of it doesn't work out when you're young because the guy doesn't know how to be sophisticated and the woman doesn't really know how to sophisticate a guy. And so it's the idea of the Beauty and the Beast story is the archetypal story of a woman who was first put herself together. Notice in that story, she is very well learned, ordered. She kind of has goals. She knows what she wants. She's figured out. And then she's willing to create something with somebody. And so she goes and finds a monster and creates a sophisticated gentleman out of him. And I think when you get older, hopefully that's already done. You don't have to do much work there. But there is something to this idea of women guide that with a man. They say in the Bible, a woman made man self-conscious. Well, there's some truth to that. Women make men self-conscious. We get worried about ourselves. How should I look? How should I be? Think about young boys when they're like 12 and 13. They stink. They don't try to even comb their hair or do anything. And about the time they hit puberty, and certainly by 15 years old, they're already, I got to worry about my hair and I got to do this. I want to dress this way. And they start being self-conscious about how they are in public. Well, it's this idea that There was a metaphor a gal told me once, Betty Sproul. She says, if men are the seed in the plant, women are the soil. You're the context that guides the growth of the man. And the old archetype, you see it all the time in old magazines and fantasy stories. There's the woman who's looking as hot as she can look, and she's got this crazy beast, right? It's like either a huge wolf or a bear or some monster or a dragon, and she's like scantily clad next to it, but like she's got control of it. It's hers, right? Same idea in the movie Brotherhood of the Wolf, where at the end it's essentially this woman that's controlling these wild beasts going out and killing everybody. It's the archetype of the woman that is able to guide that chaos and control, and it's that partnership together that's dangerous. It's also the most powerful thing in the world. If two people can get it together and then figure out how to work together in such a manner like that, you're powerful. It's the most powerful thing in the world. And so the idea of two minds are better than one. Well, if you can become one being and totally manifest what you got as a man capable within you as chaos and sophistication, and then the woman that's able to figure that out, how to maintain the order created by the chaotic individual, then you're good to go. And so that's why I believe women look for stability, and then men they're gonna look for that chaos in a man that's gonna help create more stability. They go out in the world and they create stability, and the woman helps manage it. Now, my disclaimer for all that is that I'm not saying that's law. I'm not saying that's where you have to be. I'm saying most likely you're gonna fall into some of that, and you may dabble in the other side of it. So I believe that these archetypes and the way the genetics play out is there's certain patterns of behavior. Now, I also believe if you're homosexual or trans or all that stuff, you're going to fall on that somewhere. And all those things I said, either for men or for women. It's like, consider that, when they say there's masculine energy and feminine energy, it's that type of stuff. You're either going to be more masculine with that type of stuff or more feminine with that stuff, and you're going to be somewhere on that scale. And so Tony Robbins has a cool thing where he says, passion in a relationship, especially connection, is where there's opposite forces on those energies. So if a man's real masculine, he's going to look for a real feminine woman, or vice versa. And I think it's the same way. If you got a really effeminate man, who they end up going for, right? You always see him with a really masculine woman. And so it's the idea you're going to have to match those energies. So whatever you happen to be, wherever you are, whoever you are, whatever you are, your sexual preferences or whatever you are on all that, generally, I'm going to make the guess you're probably going to look for a partner that's going to match the opposite side of that. And that's where you'll find it. And so now sexually, I believe this manifests itself sexually too. And you can definitely see that when you look at the extremes of sexual fantasies, right? Starting with men, since it's the more commonly known one. What do men always like in the sexual fantasies? You always see the librarian, the nurse. Let's see, help me out here. What else we got? It's always someone that looks really innocent, and they're usually trying to play off really innocent, but they're dressed sexually. And then the idea is that they're a freak in the bedroom, right? And they always say, how's the slogan go? A lady in the street, freak in the bed. Why not, right? Because if a man is the black with a little white in the middle, and he's seeing the woman as the white with a little bit of black in the middle. So what does he want? The completely ordered, put together, innocent thing that has no chaos about it. And then he wants to unleash all that chaos and be the one that he gets access to it, right? So it's like the other metaphor I like using. Well, to every man, his woman is the garden, the old archetype of the Garden of Eden, right? It's the Garden of Eden. And he wants to be the only one that gets to root around in the garden, right? And he wants to find all the chaos and the craziness within the garden and be the thing that tames it. Well, the opposite side. Look at the woman. The woman now, a bunch of Google engineers, and as they make the joke, well, engineers aren't very socially adept, and of course, so they come up with this study where they find out all the different Google searches, and they find out, well, what are the archetypes that women chase after sexually? And now that since 50 Shades of Grey came out, some of it's not as much of a secret, right? Best-selling book, and a lot of women, they go, I'm not into that. There's a lot of fucking liars out there. That's what's up. But so they rank the top 5. Top 1 is vampire, and number 2 is werewolf. So that pretty much explains that whole phenomenon with Twilight. That pretty much explains all that, right? And then you got number 3, I believe, was billionaire. Number 4, I think, was surgeon. And number 5 was the funny one, pirate. Well, what do they all have in common? These are creatures or men who are deemed as somewhat untamable, especially the werewolf and the vampire, right? They're kind of out there. They're not even of this world. And then it's the idea of what do the surgeon, the billionaire have? Well, they're high up there on the dominance hierarchy, especially be a billionaire, right? But generally the idea is what those people say they do. And the surgeons, there's always kind of a creepiness to surgeon, right? I mean, they're dealing with cutting into bodies and stuff like that. So it's the idea of there's unknown to them. They're mysterious, and generally they're going to be kind of controlling these forces. And then she gets to be the one that controls that. And she gets to be the one that has some play into that. And essentially, it's the idea that women like to be able to go in and know that they told a man what to do. And that they have that power of playing with that, right? Like, I wielded chaos for a little bit. And obviously, they don't like it all the time, right? Because that's the whole problem of the guy that's too nice. You got the guy that's too nice. Well, the women don't like that. They don't like it when he does everything she tells them to do. Well, shit, that's boring. That's no fun. And since we like causing problems in our life, we got to deal with shit like that, right? So you want a little bit of chaos. You want somebody who's going to push back a bit. And so this is somewhat some things I found online, as well as my discoveries of own experience. And I feel like there's some truth to these ideas of the archetypes of gender roles and the way we play out sexually and what we're into. And since we're on the topic, and so basically to wrap that part up, there's truth to that. And it's not that I know I use a lot of times, well, this is what men want, this is what women want. You might be a little more feminine man or a masculine woman, and you might be on the other side of that. That's the whole idea of the woman who goes out and takes on career and owns the world and everything like that, and to say, well, that's the masculine role. And the whole idea of feminism is to say that, well, there are some women who are going to want to take on that masculine role, and that's okay. And that's fine. What I'm arguing is based on that distribution, that's not everybody. Most people are going to fall into a certain category with variation, but you're going to be towards the middle mostly. And there's going to be some of us that are on the extremes, and you're probably more obvious when you're on the extremes, right? Where you're at. It's not going to be as much of a secret. And sometimes you're in the middle. You got to figure that out on your own. But I hope to share all this with you guys, that you can take some of this and maybe it'll make sense of some of your past experiences, make sense of where you're at now, and maybe make a lot of sense of some people that are around you. And you guys can help make sense of your personal identity on kind of who you are, what you're into, what you're looking for, and why.